Hey, welcome to VegSource. I'm Jeff Nelson. I am thrilled to have with me today Dr. Will Tuttle. Will, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I am also delighted to be here, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you. Dr. Tuttle is a visionary author and educator. His book here, I want to show you. The World Peace Diet has inspired so many people to embrace veganism for global harmony and ethical awakening, really. And this is just one of several books that Dr. Tuttle has authored. His studies in philosophy, music, spirituality, that all show that our food choices affect our health and affect the world. And his work has been translated into so many different languages. It has influenced just countless people around the world. And today we're going to discuss his latest work, which is called Food for Freedom: Reclaiming Our Health and Rescuing Our World. It explores how human liberation is tied to the freedom of all sentient beings. And I'm going to put a link down in the description where you can go and buy the book, which I recommend. It's a book that's it's very timely for what's going on in the world today and what's been going on in recent years. If you follow my videos, you know my last video was about mind control and propaganda. And this is an area where I think Dr. Tuttle has information as well. He's produced a lot of important analysis about the COVID operation, I know, and what goals of people that are behind some of the things going on might be in the world these days. And not only does he have this cogent analysis and explanations, but he got really useful ideas on what to do to protect yourself and the world, really. So his new book here, I've got my copy, Food for Freedom. It's based in some way on Dr. Tuttle's fascinating journey. It begins with his travels with very little money with his brother Ed during the Vietnam era, and they explored intentional communities like the farm. The farm was one of America's largest communes. It was founded in Tennessee in 1971 by Stephen Gaskin and hundreds of idealistic young people from San Francisco. It became a pioneering force for vegetarianism, as well as for things like natural childbirth and just, sustainable living in general. At its peak in the early 1980s, I think it housed up to 1,500 people. So Dr. Tuttle went on to become a Zen monk, getting his PhD in education at Berkeley, and then going from there to just become a leading voice for compassion and nonviolence. And you and your wife, Will, I think, Madeline, you share your message through music as well. I know you've done over a long time. Will's an accomplished musician, a pianist, a lyricist, and Madeline is an accomplished artist, I think, and she's also a musician. And so they weave together art and activism in a unique way. So it is wonderful to have you, Will. What's going on with you?
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate your deep understanding about the farm. Actually, most people have no idea about the history of the farm. It was people from San Francisco going out there, like you said, in the early 1970s. My brother Ed and I got there in 1975. At that point, we were not vegetarians. We were really interested in spiritual awakening. We left home right after college in 1975, and with no money, we thought we would just walk and meditate like sadhus of India and attain enlightenment. And we thought the best place to attain enlightenment is California. So we were going to walk all the way to California, and we got as far as Buffalo, New York. And it was really cold. It was October, so we just walked south all the way eventually to Alabama. But we did stop for, I would say, a good month or so at the farm, and toward the end of the year of 1975, and that was it. At that point, it was 900 people. They were all, they said, vegetarians. We would today call them vegans. They ate no meat, dairy products, eggs, or honey, or anything, and they did it for ethical reasons. It was mainly for hunger, to try to reduce the amount of suffering that human beings go through by wasting all this food that could be fed to them and feeding it to animals, and also for cruelty. They explained to me the abuse of animals. And they had 900 people, mainly, they were all vegan, and a lot of the children, there were about 200 kids there at that point. Most of them were vegan from birth. They were all thriving. So that was it. I became a vegetarian in 1975. I've never eaten meat in my life since then. And My wife, Madeline, actually in Switzerland the same month and year did the same thing. And then 5 years later, in 1980, I was living in meditation centers in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I figured it out about dairy and eggs. So I've been a vegan since 1980. So we're getting up there over 40 years. And I always say it gets better every day. I mean, I'm so happy that I figured that out, and my health has been terrific. And it's just a wonderful thing on every level. So, as you say, the underlying thrust really of my life really for the last 40 years has been to try to help share this message with people through writing, through music and art. Like Madeline's an artist and she plays the flute. So we've been on the road a lot too. And as you say, the World Peace Diet came out that was in 2005. It's been translated, like you said, into about 18 languages. And so we've been invited all over the world. And I think we've given perhaps more lectures than anyone in history, and just in terms of traveling and doing that, for over 4,000 lectures in all 50 states, over 50 countries. And I just love doing it. I love being able to talk to people directly. I think it's great to talk like this. We can do that. But to actually,
you were just out for a couple of weeks. How long? I mean, you leave home to travel for a week or two.
Right. Yeah. Well, we lived actually in an RV for 17 years full time. So that really, we were just almost every, we'd put on about 200 events a year. So, like every other day at least. Now we have a house in Northern California, and we about half the year. So we just did a short tour of 13 events in 10 days up to the Pacific Northwest. We're leaving in soon at the end of November for a 5-month tour where we'll do, like last year we did about 100 events over the 5 months. So we just like to get out there and meet people and talk to people and feel the pulse of the vegan movement, of course, and of our society. And like you were saying, we're going through a lot of major changes, and it's very important. I think the vegan movement is more important than ever, really.
Amen. Yeah. So many people have read the World Peace Diet, or they know about it and kind of have seen your website or other people who promote it as well. So what inspired you to write Food for Freedom, and how does it build on the principles in the World Peace Diet?
That's a really important question. Thanks. I wrote the Food for Freedom mainly to highlight what I saw happening from 2020 on. And the World Peace Diet itself, even though we published a 10th anniversary edition, I didn't have to change anything. It's really one of those evergreen books. It talks about the underlying principles of compassion and kindness for animals and health and environmental sustainability and all these things. None of that really has changed. It's more relevant than ever. But what I was really dismayed, I guess you would say, seeing, and it's something that I've also been warning about in many ways, that the vegan community, the people who identify as vegans, don't seem in many cases to have done enough inner work to see beyond the shallow veneer of the mainstream media and what I refer to as the meat medical media pharmaceutical complex. This whole complex, which is very, very not only wealthy but powerful. And so when 2020 came, I immediately, and Madeline also, we immediately could see that this is a hoax. They're trying to scare us with some kind of story about a virus. And I really, from the very beginning, when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, here we go. What is this? Because they had tried this before a few times with SARS and other things. And I've been one of those people who have always felt, I think probably because of my father, he was going to be a doctor, and he was in World War II as a medic. And he said he wasn't a doctor. He ended up buying a newspaper right about the time I was born in Massachusetts. And so I was raised in a newspaper family, but he wanted to be a doctor, he said, and he didn't like being a doctor, a medic, because not only because of all the blood and horror that he saw, but also because he had to give so many injections to the soldiers. He said they would line up in these long lines, and he had to give everyone an injection in the arm, and he saw a lot of bad reactions. And so he said, I think the best thing is to try to stay away from doctors if you can. You know, try to take care of your own health and don't go to doctors. And so I have followed that advice and pretty much stayed out of pharmaceutical, out of pharmacies and out of doctors' offices for the last 45 years. And he became a newspaper man. So I learned from that, don't trust the media, because I learned really just growing up and listening to my father and mother talking at dinner, we're not going to run this news story because so-and-so advertiser wouldn't like it. So I know in my bones what most people don't know, I realize, which is don't trust the media, because it's always a voice of the advertisers. And the biggest advertisers, as we know, are the pharmaceutical industry, the petroleum industry, the fast food industry, the bankers in the background. So we're not going to be getting valid, truthful, authentic information from the mainstream media, because it's always has to serve these interests. And so when I saw this huge push to get everyone to wear a mask, for example, to cover your face, this is a very diabolical thing. And I remember thinking, gosh, they're wearing masks in these other countries, but they'll never do it here in the United States. People won't go along with that. And we live way out in the country, and we don't have a TV, so I didn't know, but I remember going into town to go shopping, and I couldn't believe my eyes that everybody was wearing masks. And they were like social distancing. They were like afraid of each other. And it was like this surreal world. I think, is this actually happening? And then I realized it was literally impossible to talk logically or rationally about this to almost to anyone. And the so-called vegan movement was just as, strict about it, or even more. I mean, they were even more. They were like, whoa. And I thought, but the pharmaceutical industry, I mean, come on, this is like the number one enemy of animals in the world. I mean, they're continually torturing animals by the millions, and they make all their money on sick people. And there's over 10,000 drugs and hormones that are used on cows and pigs and chickens. You know, it's like a total pharmaceutical thing. I've learned this. I've been an animal rights activist for 40 years. And so it's clear to me that actually the pharmaceutical industry is more an enemy of veganism than even the meat industry and the dairy industry, because the meat and dairy industries, they can at least, people have to eat something, so they're buying up, they're doing, fake meat and fake cheese, and they're buying up that, so they can still make money with that. But the pharmaceutical industry, it just basically needs a lot of sick people, a whole flood of sick people, and how you do that is through toxic food and chemicals. And then I realized that, Rockefeller, way back when he made all his money on petroleum, that he realized, and the industry realized, that if you refine that petroleum into petrochemicals, there's a lot of money there. And if you refine the petrochemicals even further, what do you get? You get pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals are just refined petroleum. And so the more chemicals that go out into the environment through pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, which are now rampant, glyphosate and all these things, then you create a lot of sick people because they eat this food and they drink the water and so forth. And so that's great for business. Now we get lots of pharmaceuticals. And if you can mandate people getting actually injected with pharmaceuticals and have no liability possible, I mean, give me a break. I mean, how can anyone not see? This is so obvious. What a farce. And yet I was told, you cannot speak here because you're a COVID denialist, or you're questioning something. And
let me interrupt you just so that people know what we're talking about here. Because we touched on this the other day. You were actually disinvited during COVID from some Vegfest events, right? Because to me, learning that was kind of shocking to hear that someone with your influence and, your contributions to the vegan movement, a respected author who's, inspired all these people, that you would be barred from a Vegfest events, rather. These are events, meant to promote veganism. You were excluded because, you differed from Dr. Fauci or whatever. Can you tell us more about what happened and how it felt to be sidelined, at least in a couple of places, by the very community that you've helped to create and supported for decades?
Well, yeah, it's one of those things. It's painful for sure because of all, really, and quite honestly, of all of the sort of well-known people in the animal rights or animal liberation or vegan movement, I was recognized and I think respected more almost than anyone. I mean, I remember when they had the big debate between Gary Francione and Bruce Friedrich, sort of the welfareists versus the animal liberationists, and they had to pick someone who would moderate the debate. They picked me. It's like because the World Peace Diet was like this book that just promotes veganism and promotes better welfare and liberation and everything. It's kind of like I could go anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country, and everyone would always come, and we had big turnouts. It was just always.
It's true. It's true. The World Peace Diet has always been up here, kind of above, in a sense.
Right.
It really is. It's a very inclusive. Nobody argues with it, whereas people argue among other aspects. That's
right.
Interesting. I didn't know that you had been selected to moderate that exchange.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, so this was it, and we would go to Europe and China and India and Africa and the Middle East and Australia, New Zealand, everywhere, and we had big crowds. We'd have over 1,000 people very often, 2,000 people. We had come to one of my talks in Asia. I think we set records, But the thing is, what I realized right away, just on Facebook or whatever, when I posted that we should just get together and ignore this, the absolute hatred really that came from people from that and the warnings people gave me. They said, look, if you speak up about this, you're going to lose your whole reputation. And I thought, I mean, this is truth. And if we're worried more about our reputation than the truth, what kind of a life is that? I didn't want to live that kind of a life. I didn't want to be afraid to speak up about things that are really killing people or harming people and animals and everything. I've always felt like I should speak up about this.
There's a great quote. I don't know if it's Voltaire. I just saw it recently. If the truth kills someone, let them die. I think that's a Voltaire quote.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. So So during COVID, things kind of shut down. Nobody had any Vegfest for a year or two, and we continued anyway. We did lectures anyway. We went to Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida. They stayed open, and we went on staff, and we just stayed there for I think 2.5 months and gave lectures and concerts. And then we did there was some other, in Florida was the only state that was really more open. And so we did quite a few events in Florida. People were more willing to just get together and ignore this whole ridiculous thing. But then when they started opening up again, the big Vegfest where they had always asked me to please speak, like in San Francisco, Sacramento, Santa Rosa, San Luis Obispo. No. You're not allowed to speak here. And I'm still not allowed. I mean, it's not over. And in fact, we just did a tour up to the Pacific Northwest, and the same thing is still happening. It's still happening. People are saying, no, you should never give a platform to someone who questions science. Like science is some kind of thing that I mean, I used to teach college courses in epistemology, and the study of how we know what we think is true is actually true. So we have this method we call the scientific method, and we think that somehow that magically gives us the truth, but we don't realize. And I also took courses at Berkeley when I had to get my PhD, and I think this is important. I took courses in quantitative and qualitative research methodologies, and through those courses, I really went deep into research and how it is always dependent on the kinds of questions that people are asking and who's funding it and what the objective is. Doctors and most professionals don't ever get that kind of education. They're very naive. They believe, I remember doctors said, because the whole thing was the PCR test, right? So we know that someone has COVID because of the PCR, the polymer, whatever it is, a polymerase chain reaction test. And the fellow that invented that test said very clearly, Terry Mullis, that you can never use this to diagnose anything. But I remember talking to vegan MDs And they would say, I would say, how do you know that someone has COVID? And they said, well, we send it out to the lab. It goes to the lab. The lab knows. It's like they would never question the lab, no matter what. And that's what I realized. It's like this whole system is in place where we trust these authorities. And I learned in my research at Berkeley and in teaching epistemology and so forth that it's in many ways it's a house of cards. You rise up through the educational system, and in order to get the degrees, you have to become like them. And it works great. You get paid well, you have security, you have a reputation, but what price do you pay? And what price are we paying for that? And I think that's why this whole COVID thing could go for so long, with people still, even today, don't get it. They still don't realize the terrible damage that these injections actually do when you have toxic chemicals going right into your bloodstream. And everyone's afraid to talk about it, because if you do, you lose your medical license. And if you lose your medical license...
So it's a very authoritarian system. The drug companies have a lot of power over the curriculum and treatment, standards. And I know myself a number of doctors, vegan doctors, who think like you do and like I do, but they're not going to talk about it. They'll talk about it with their friends. They're not going to go out for just the reasons you mentioned. You can lose your job. You can be discredited. You can be disinvited from somewhere. And it's kind of a wacky time that we find ourselves in. And I think of people like my dear friend, John McDougall, who died this year, unfortunately, who's given so many talks debunking pharmaceutical research, and is always drawing attention to who paid for it and how you can structure a study to get any result you want. Scientists are clever and they got to make money. And yeah, it's, that natural kind of suspicion that I would expect most vegans would have towards anything medical, it's just kind of, for many people, just went out the window. But it's, that's how it was designed, I'm afraid.
Well, yes, I think that's a really good point, Jeff. And I think part of it was that the way it was presented, it was, I think, especially our compassion and our caring was weaponized in many ways against us. Like as vegans and as people on the left in general, we will do anything to help other people, right? So they said, we wear a mask to help, to care for others. We take an injection because we care about our loved ones and we don't want to make them sick. So there's this always, we're not doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for others. And it's like people can't question that, because they feel like if they question it, then they're selfish and self-centered. And I think that is something that we have to understand is a tactic that's being used to harm us. So it's very important that we learn to be discriminating and really, really look deeply at where these messages are coming from and who benefits from these messages, and is there really valid science behind them? There's a lot of hoaxes that are going on right now, and I think this deception really that's rampant in our society, it's in many ways it's to forward an agenda of turning human beings into livestock. And so that's really why I wrote the Food for Freedom book, was to warn people, but not to make people afraid, but just to wake up to see what's actually happening, because there's the mentality that we human beings sort of naturally have, not naturally, but we're conditioned to have towards certain animals like cows and pigs and chickens. We don't see them as animals. We see them as objects that we buy and sell by the pound. So we reduce them. We're taught to do that by the cultural rituals we're born into. And I think we have to understand that there are certain human beings who, because of their conditioning, they look at most of humanity as livestock. We don't wake up in the morning and think, I hate chickens, I hate pigs and cows. We just use them. We don't think about it. And I think there's something similar going on with us. And we are being, I think, through technology, which can centralize power in the hands of a few people more than ever in history, that can be used, that we can be surveyed and tracked like we survey and track millions of animals. A few people can control millions of animals. A few people control millions of people now, too. We have to understand that and be very aware. And that's why it's so important to go vegan. That's the point I want to make is when we live, we will not have freedom until we free animals, because the underlying attitude that we have of turning other beings into objects boomerangs back on us. This is the spiritual teaching also. Whatever we sow, we reap. So it's a big picture, really.
You talk about, as they were called, deceptive cultural narratives surrounding food that you think, limit human freedom. Can you talk about that? What are some of those deceptive cultural narratives, as you say?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of them, a bunch of deceptive narratives, and they're harmful. Like, for example, if we're sitting down at the table and we're eating meat, dairy, and eggs, one of the main things we don't want to do is make a connection with what we're actually eating. So we learn at a very early age to disconnect the reality that's on our plate from the actual reality that it took to get it onto our plate. No one would ever say on Sunday morning while we're eating bacon, gosh, this bacon is delicious. I wonder what her life was like. Right? We don't go there, right? We don't want to think about that. So that basically compels us to practice disconnecting ritually, because meals are a ritual. Meals are the primary ritual in every society where we get together and we bond over an activity. And so we're eating what is not me becomes me. This is a very powerful, symbolic thing. And so when the main ritual in every society that we're engaging in 2 or 3 times every day with people that are close to us is a practice of disconnecting, then we become very good at disconnecting. We lose the capacity to make connections that are relevant. And my PhD at Berkeley, I actually focused quite a bit on intelligence. And intelligence, basically the definition of it is the capacity to make relevant connections. So when you have a situation where everyone is indoctrinated from birth through these very powerful rituals to master the art of disconnecting, just not making connections. And that's not only cognitively, but it's also emotionally, and I would say also even spiritually. Then you have a whole population of people who are relatively easily manipulated, because when we don't make connections, then we just go along. We kind of do what we're told to do. We don't see what's really going on. So that's one. I'll give a couple more. Another one, the subtext of every meal also is privilege and elitism, because the underlying, we don't say that, but the underlying message when we're eating animal foods is that certain people are inherently superior, other beings are inherently inferior, and it's fine for the superior beings to dominate and exploit the inferior beings. This is what we're eating every day, that mentality, that basic story. And yet here we are, we're trying to create a world of justice, of equality, and so forth. And yet our main ritual is the opposite of that. And we see what happens. We have more injustice and inequality than ever. I remember right before COVID, the Oxfam did a study, and I think it was in 2018, and they said that the 1% of the population of the human beings on planet Earth had the same amount of wealth as the other 99%. They did the same thing again in 2022, and it was now the 1% had twice as much wealth as everybody else on the planet. It's just doubling like every 4 years. So this is the thing. But we have to see it's our own fault in many ways. I mean, if we're going to insist on eating animal foods and sowing the seeds of disconnectedness, of injustice, of what I also refer to, another big one I'll just mention briefly, is the domination of Sophia, the sacred feminine dimension of consciousness, which is the capacity to love and nurture and protect life. When we suppress that also, then we find the same thing happening to us. We lose our capacity. So it's really about resurrecting these capacities, resurrecting our natural intelligence, compassion, empathy, awareness, and being proactive in being healthy. That's really important. Not thinking that I only can be healthy by going to a doctor and taking a drug, going to a drugstore, but to really learn how to be healthy. Because health and freedom are connected at a very deep level. And people don't realize that. I think when we lose our health, we lose our freedom. That's a very important thing to understand.
It's interesting because we're doing this on the day after the election is when we're recording this, and looking at social media and so on, I'm seeing some people are very excited about the idea of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. looking into the CDC and, why are people so unhealthy? And that's all interesting and important, if that happens. But the main thing I think is, look, to create health, get healthy. You get yourself healthy, because nobody, no CDC, no food company, no doctors or anything like that are going to do it. People have to learn to take control themselves. And, that's really the only route. Now, you mentioned, and when you're talking about these cultural narratives, you talk about the golden rule as central to your teachings. So can you talk about that in terms of food choices and, leading to greater peace and freedom?
Yes, I think we don't realize how morality and ethics is really pretty simple and straightforward. And I remember when we went to China and we went to Chufu, the city in northeast China where Confucius lived, and they had this big United Nations World Heritage Site, and they have right there, Confucius say, do not do to others what you would not want to have done to yourself, right? This basic teaching of the golden rule that's propounded in all the world's wisdom traditions and religions by the great sages and saints. It's so simple. And yet it's something that, even though we know we should try to abide by that in our relationship with other human beings, very often we don't do it when it comes to animals. We think somehow that animals don't matter, that we can abuse them in all kinds of ways. And since they're so inferior, or they don't have a soul, or whatever the legitimizing rationalization might be, that allows us to do that. And we don't realize that our violence towards these beings, even though they're incapable of retaliating, this is an important point, they don't sue us, they don't hit us back. These poor cows and chickens and pigs, whatever we do to them, they just suffer and they die and they get abused and so forth. What we don't realize is, even though they do not retaliate, our violence towards them always retaliates. It comes back as a heart attack, or as some kind of physical disease, or as stress and depression and anxiety, or as conflict in society. Our violence always comes back. And great sages and saints, and I think anyone really who opens their mind and heart to understanding the power really of our thoughts and actions, we all know this in our bones, that whatever we put out eventually comes back. And so the golden rule is really the golden key, not only to happiness for ourselves and others, but also it ties in directly with the other main teaching in all the world religions, which is, whatever you sow, you will reap. We try to think that, it doesn't really matter. And Madeline and I, we've been traveling for 30 years, warning people, if we are going to insist on force medicating and microchipping and tracking millions of beings every day, what makes us think that that's not going to happen to us? Whatever we do, it comes back, and we find, and that's the mysterious thing. It's very interesting, and I write about this a little bit in Food for Freedom, is why have we been so willing to just be microchipped in many ways? I mean, we got phones, we have things that track us. People they wanted everybody to be tracked, so why have we been so willing to have our freedoms taken away, being told you can't go to church, you can't speak your mind, these basic, like the Bill of Rights, just we don't need that anymore. Why were we so gullible and so willing to give that up? And these rights up, these precious rights, which are easily lost and very difficult to ever get them back again. And I think the reason is, quite honestly, this deep shame and sense of it's a healthy sense of guilt, I think, of what we're doing to animals. It just reduces our power. Again, that's why I was so surprised that vegans didn't just like jump up and say, all right, look, we're free. We want animals to be free. You're not going to take away our freedom. If we don't have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of communication, and freedom of bodily autonomy, we can never help animals. We can't even help ourselves. How can we help animals? I was shocked that people who really care about freedom for animals were willing to give up their own freedom. I mean, that's completely implausible. And yet, and the irony, of course, in many ways, was it was the people who care about their own freedom who, in many ways, said, well, I want to have my own sheep and my own goats and be self-sufficient out on the land and kill my own animals for food. And so, again, that's incongruous as well. Like, we prize freedom for ourselves, and yet we're going to steal it from others. And get mad if someone tries to steal it from us. So the whole realization for me was that we are natural allies. The people who care about animal liberation, people who care about human freedom, we should be really working together and collaborating enthusiastically together. And that's why I wrote the book Food for Freedom, to try to help people see these connections, which I think ultimately we have to see this. Otherwise, we are going to keep going down a path that will not have a good ending, like cows and pigs and chickens. 10,000 years ago, we started imprisoning cows, and look, they're still in prison 10,000 years later. I wouldn't want that to happen to us humans. And we have technology in place where it could happen, quite honestly. It's an important time.
So how does, shifting gears here, consumerism and materialism, as you discuss in the book, how do they inhibit our ability to make conscious food choices?
That's the key to everything. What animal agriculture forces us into is philosophical materialism, because we're eating beings that we buy and sell millions of times every day by the pound. We buy and sell these beings by the pound, like they're just sacks of cement. That is not only incredibly damaging to them, they're just horribly mutilated and abused because of our materialism, but it hurts us. And pretty soon we see ourselves merely as matter. And that's what we're taught in school. We're just a thing, and then out of that comes the whole idea that the universe is just this random thing that happened. Nothing has any meaning, and we're just here, to pass on our genes. And so that's a philosophy for slaves. If you want to have people who don't have an inner sense of purpose that is enlightening and uplifting, if the only reason that we can see for being happy is to be comfortable and to have more wealth and to have more that we can consume, and the people that we venerate the most in our society are those who consume most conspicuously. Bill Gates has like 11 private jets. I mean, gosh, I wish I could be him. That's what people think. And so this materialism leads to misery and to consumerism, which destroys ecosystems and destroys the inner landscape of our consciousness, of our relationships, of our society. It turns us against each other, and it's based on deception. And the thing about deception, I just want to say quickly, is that of all the ways of harming people, you can hit them, you can abuse them, steal from them, all these things. People know they've been harmed, but with deception, you can harm people and they don't even know they're being harmed. That's why deception in many ways is the most insidious form of harm. And that's what's happening so much. People are getting harmed and they're losing their health, their wealth, everything, and they don't realize, and they still think that those who are doing it are their friends and allies. Our government agencies, the media, and so it's essential to realize this, and also realize that the other thing that deception accomplishes is it divides people. because those who realize that they're being deceived suddenly now are in conflict with those who don't. And so if you want to divide a society, you start just pouring out deception and people start fighting with each other, and then you can control them. So it's really important for us to understand that being gullible, like being fooled, is not just being a victim. If I'm gullible and I'm fooled, I am also a perpetrator. Because as soon as I'm fooled, and then I think, oh, I better wear a mask, and then I start wearing my mask, I start basically reinforcing that in other people and becoming a perpetrator and causing violence in the society. So gullible people create tremendous violence. And it's really important to understand that we have a responsibility to clearly understand what's happening and do everything we can not to be fooled. Because if we're fooled, it becomes contagious. And as it becomes contagious, the whole society, the basic immune system of a society is the ability not to be fooled. So that's very important. So I'm so glad you did your last video was about how not to have our minds be manipulated. I mean, that is so important. I really appreciate your efforts on this, Jeff, really.
Thanks. Don't get me started. Definitely have the term "good Germans" comes to mind sometimes to me.
Right.
But people who I know who have serious health problems that they've developed recently, it's almost like they can't make that connection. That's too much.
Right.
Let me shift gears here again to when Sabrina and I went vegetarian. We read John Robbins' Diet for New America, and to me, health-wise, that sort of appealed to Sabrina, the animal argument. She'd had chickens as pets as a kid, and she'd seen them differently. And then reading that book made her realize, wait a sec, these are the same animals as the ones we're eating. And so then she got sick. She got an autoimmune disease, very serious, and we came across John McDougall and went on his low-fat vegan diet, and she put it in remission. And only after being vegan then for a period of time did we kind of the animal aspect open up to us. So we came into this through health, basically, and our self-interest. And then I guess maybe because you're no longer complicit in that, you can kind of take a look at it and go, hey, that's messed up. That I don't hold with that, although Sabrina was already there. So my question, what role do you think spirituality and inner growth play in transitioning to a plant-based lifestyle as per your view here?
Yeah, I think it's very helpful, but it's not. It's like whatever brings someone in. Like you said, like with Sabrina, it was the health, and then out of the health, sort of a motivation to be healthy, which is that's a good motivation. I mean, it's a wonderful motivation. And out of that, then we begin to be willing to look more deeply into how the animals are treated, and maybe environmental concerns and human starvation and all these other things. But ultimately, from my point of view, veganism is just a modern iteration of an ancient teaching, ahimsa, which means non-harmfulness, to try to minimize the amount of abuse and violence we're causing in the world. And that's, to me, is synonymous really with spirituality. I think what spirituality really is, it's nothing exotic. It's just simply understanding that each one of us is an emanation of an infinite divine love on this earth. Maybe we're not taught that, but that there's one life living through all of us, and we are related. And the more we bless others, the more we're blessed. The more we harm others, the more we're harmed. I mean, this underlying understanding. And I was fortunate, I think, in my 20s to just decide to spend thousands of hours just sitting and not doing anything, just watching my mind. And I was able eventually to get to a place where I realized that I had been so programmed, and I had identified with that programming and with the name and all my stories and everything. And then to realize I'm none of that. What I am is like the infinite sky where the clouds come and go, but what we are is eternal consciousness. I mean, I took a vow of silence for like 3 months and just sat. And so that understanding for me is kind of underlies everything. When we realize that we are the infinite consciousness, then our reputation isn't that important in the big picture and all these other things. The most important thing is to speak our truth with love for the benefit of others, for the benefit of all beings. And do our best to develop our inner guidance system. I think that's the key. Not to learn that as soon as we trust outer authorities, we are in danger. Because outer authorities very often have been programmed in ways that are not in our best interest. The real authority is internal. And when we can trust that, we can be healthy. And being healthy is the greatest gift we can give to others. So when Sabrina got more healthy, she was blessing everyone around her. People around her, animals, everyone is blessed. Because the more drugs we take, the more toxins go into the world. It's all poison. So health is a very compassionate thing. Being healthy is very compassionate, and it's a very important thing. But the inner authority and making a connection with that, I think, is critical.
Beautiful. You talk about deep veganism and surface veganism. Can you explain the difference and its significance?
Right. Well, the shallow veganism, basically, or just going vegan, is great in a sense. It's just basically saying, okay, no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no wool, no silk, no leather. Try to minimize our violence to animals. Wonderful. It's good. It'd be great if more people did that. But a lot of people think, okay, I'm vegan now, so I'm not the problem. Everybody else is the problem. I have to just go out and change everybody now, and then we'll have a better world, and fail to actually go deeper and realize that even though we've changed our outer buying habits and so forth, we haven't actually changed the inner, or healed, maybe the better word, healed the wounds that come from living in a society where we're raised with materialism. Right? We're still materialistic. We still haven't questioned the deep underlying structure of our society and engaged in connecting with who we really are at a deeper level. And I think when we fail to take that second step, then we fall prey, like we saw happening, to these narratives that make us go right along with very harmful things, like the whole medical thing we saw with COVID. And so, and also to start fighting with each other about tactics and all the fighting within the vegan movement, and all these different things. So I think the inner work, the whole idea, I guess, basically is, Walt Whitman said in one of his poems, "I and mine, we do not convince by arguments, we convince by our presence." So the second step of deep veganism is when we embody what veganism is as just love for animals and for each other, and develop the capacity to have relationships with others where we're not shaming, blaming, criticizing them, but actually doing our best to speak our truth and do it for the best of everyone. So it's an ongoing challenge. It's like a never-ending challenge, I would say.
What are some practical steps that you suggest for people who are seeking to free themselves from harmful food narratives like we're talking about?
Well, the practical steps really are, like I said, number one, to actually go vegan. I mean, to just do the best we can not to buy and support the systems of slavery of animals and humans, like chocolate and other things that use slavery. Try to be more conscious as consumers. But then beyond that, I really would have to say to have a discipline where we take some time every day to do self-inquiry, to like, what am I? And really listen internally and let our mind become quiet. There's many different forms of meditation and spiritual practice, but I think if we don't do something like that, our mind is basically just running all the time. So, when I was, it's been like 50 years, when I was like, I guess 22, I started doing this every day, and I haven't missed a day since. I just take time every day to just sit quietly and meditate. And to me, it's just a very important foundation for everything. And it can be done while moving. I think some people do it while they're jogging, I guess, or hiking. But I do think it's very important to take time every day to quiet the mind and not be a human doing, just be. And also find spiritual teachings, whatever tradition you're drawn to, whether it's Christian or Buddhist or whatever, and reflect on the wisdom of these teachings, so that we can live from a more spiritual understanding and free ourselves from materialism, which is really harmful. It's really harmful, materialism.
Wow, Will, this has been a great talk. I'm really enjoying this. I'm going to have you come back. There's a lot we can talk about. I'm going to cut to the chase and just give my review, basically, because there's just a sampling of where you go in this book is very deep. I love how you explore, the hidden influences of these powerful industries and institutions on and health and freedom and food systems. It's all related. It's all, related to each other. And the pharmaceutical, agricultural, and government sectors are so intertwined, and they profit from dependency, really, whether it's on animal products, processed foods, drugs like you talk about. And that erodes your health and your freedom. And, you show in the book how these industries that manipulate narratives about health and nutrition and freedom, and they do this again to control the choices that the consumer makes and to foster dependence. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's your collective gullibility section, and how the media is used in education and healthcare to create compliance, with what are harmful norms that hurt people, that hurt the planet. And the mistreatment, like we talked about, of the link between animal mistreatment and societal control that you touched on here is a great section, and how, people can be oppressed just like we oppress animals, and the connection between spiritual growth and freedom. And it's almost, someone listening to this might think, oh, this sounds conspiratorial or something, but you've done a great job of backing it up. And, you suggest you show this agenda that's really to promote dependence and compliance. And it aligns with your belief and mine as well in questioning society's really deep-rooted structures to find, true freedom. So I give it 2 thumbs up for sure. I recommend it. I think people would enjoy it as I did. I'm putting a link to the book below. And thank you so much, Will, for joining me today. We're going to have you back when you're back from the road next.
Great. Yeah, I look forward to it, Jeff. It's been really an honor to talk a little bit and get into this. And you're right, there's a lot more we can talk about. And thanks so much, because you've always been really a voice for self-responsibility. And I think it's that self-responsibility that's so important, rather than, like you say, being dependent on these outer systems. And that's really, I think, the key thing here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Will. And thank you to the viewers for watching to this point. Please give the video a like, a share, subscribe. You know what to do. And we'll see you on the next one.